Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new installment of Collider Connected. I am Collider's managing editor, Adam Chitwood, and I am thrilled today to be joined by Seth Meyers. Seth, how are you doing?
I'm good. We just wrapped a show for the day, so you're catching me in very high spirits.
How hot is it right now in the attic?
We did finally get some air conditioning units yesterday after the show. They were installed, and it made a big difference, but they're off for sound reasons, and it'll be interesting to see where I go sweat-wise over the next 30 minutes.
And how about the wasp situation?
The wasps are, I think based on a very small sample size of one spring in my attic, I think the peak wasp is middle May.
That's nice to hear. I was talking to Shoemaker a little bit before, and he said, ask about the wasps in that stupid attic. So,
yeah, we did. There was a lot of wasps when we started, and I think they maybe are just self-selecting out of the comedy. They might think that they might just be Trump fans and think that, we are repeating ourselves.
That's fair. Yeah. They had to move on. Well, I have a million questions for you, limited time, but I did want to ask, I know everyone kind of has an audition story from SNL, and I know you had a unique first week at SNL, but I was curious, what is your first year at SNL like? What is it kind of going in and being new there? What was your experience?
Well, I remember the part, if there was a day I could relive about my first year at SNL, the day I would want to relive was the day I found out I got hired, because it was only, you just got to pass on this incredibly good news to the people that have been supportive to you over your life. And of course, everybody knew what it meant when you got hired on SNL. It wasn't that you had to explain what a pilot is and what happens in the pilot. It was just, I'm on SNL. And it was also the last day that I didn't worry about getting fired from SNL. I gave myself one full day to enjoy being hired. And then I just started panicking about what would happen when I got there. And the thing that I remember the most about my first year was how you think of only the people who succeed at SNL when you start. And then it slowly starts dawning on you that not everybody has, Mike Myers' career on the show, or, Molly Shannon's career on the show. And pretty quickly you realize what skill sets you don't have that people who succeeded had. I was incredibly lucky when I started there that I started at the same time as Amy Poehler, and we struck up a fast friendship. And I don't think I would have made it through that first year without her, both as a comic collaborator, but way more so as a friend, because it is a very hard place to survive without friends.
Yeah, I imagine it's a pretty competitive environment. And as I said,
and the worst part is you're being competitive with people you're friends with. And that's a really hard thing, because there is a limited amount of real estate each week. And so when a friend succeeds, more often than not, it might be their sketch goes in and your sketch goes out, and you want to be happy for them, but at the same time it stings. And so I'm glad that I was at the show long enough to figure out a way to balance those feelings of jealousy and find a place where I can just celebrate my friends' successes.
I may be conflating, was your first year the Old Prospector sketch? Did that happen your first year?
Yeah, I think that was my second or third show. And that is, most things that get cut from dress, a lot of them deserve to get cut from dress. But I remember even whatever it was, my third show, thinking, clearly this should be on television tonight. I don't quite understand why Old Prospector isn't airing. It was, I really like going back and watching it, because I'm trying so hard not to laugh, because I'm so worried in my first season that I'm going to get in trouble for breaking. And I do better than most, but I don't do great.
I love that sketch so much. I think that was kind of the early days of YouTube. My friends and I found it, because obviously it didn't make it into the show, but that was one.
I'm realizing now it probably didn't make the show, because is the host in the show? I don't think the host is in that sketch, right?
I don't think so. And everyone is laughing aside from Farrell, and even Farrell starts to break towards the end.
Yeah. But that is my takeaway, is maybe the biggest problem that sketch had was they did not put the host in it. And those sketches are always going to suffer when it comes down to what goes from dress to air.
That's fair. Well, one of the things I really love on late night is how you kind of shepherd and highlight your writers. And I was curious on SNL, how you felt about kind of stepping into the role of head writer. And did that seem like a natural fit to you? Was that a position that you enjoyed at first or kind of had to grow into?
I mean, I loved it from the start, mostly because I felt that I finally found a role where I could add value to the show. And my early years, I had sketches that I'm still really proud of, but I didn't feel as though I was ever the cast member that I thought I could maybe be when it started, especially when that generation like Andy and Forte and Fred and Jason and Bill showed up. As a writer, I realized, oh, those are the guys you want your sketches. And so for me, like, that was such a fun job transition, because then my job wasn't trying to figure out how to write Seth Meyers onto the show each week. My job became how to help everybody write the best versions of their sketch, and mostly just facilitate that. It wasn't, there were so many great writers then that it was a great time to be head writer, because you just looked like you were good at your job because everybody else was so talented. But it was a ton of fun. And then my favorite day of the week became Thursday, when you would sit with 12 writers in a room and do rewrites, which were, basically 10 hours of trying to add jokes and cut everything down, but also like giant divergences into YouTube holes with large groups of people that made you laugh.
Well, and that extended beyond the show as well, I think. The Lonely Island guys were big when you were head writer, and then I think I've heard stories of they went off to make MacGruber and were calling you and telling you jokes, and you're like, don't do that joke. Well,
I got to go, the two movies that I think I have whatever the lowest producer credit you can have on a movie, maybe associate producer. On both Hot Rod and MacGruber, I was on set. And, in both cases, the Lonely Island and then Will Forte, John Solomon and Yorma, both films sort of had these trios of guys with incredibly singular visions as to what they wanted those movies to be. And in both cases, it's a shame that the movies were not the huge hits that I will happily admit we all wanted them to be. But because they were so true to what they wanted out of those films, they do endure to the place that I think there are some movies from, the mid 2000s that were hits that you go back and watch and you think, oh, there's a lot of problems with this. But both of those movies really hold up really well.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, you transitioned into late night after really kind of killing it on Weekend Update. When Lorne first approached you about late night, was that something you had ever thought you would want to do, or is it something you had been thinking about?
No, part of, I always made the mistake of thinking, I thought, well, if Jimmy got it, they're not going to give it to the next person who did, the next guy who did Weekend Update. That would be dumb. So I kind of ruled myself out on their behalf. And maybe, I think history might show that Lorne was just trying to figure out a way to get me out of there after 12 and a half years, and he saw an opportunity and jumped at it. But I didn't put any thought into it. Mike Shoemaker, my producer at Late Night, was a producer, had left SNL to be Jimmy's producer at Late Night. So he had been in that world. And we talked a lot about how we didn't think it would be a fit for me. We didn't know what I would want to do after SNL, but it happened really fast. At the time, it was still a little surprising that Jay had decided to leave. It wasn't that many years after the last sort of merry-go-round that landed Jay back at the Tonight Show. And so when he stepped down and Jimmy moved up, it happened really fast. Lorne asked me if I'd be interested in doing it and put a lot of thought into it. It did feel like my time at SNL had come. Maybe not my time to come to an end, but my era had definitely come to an end, and it had been a really special era to be a part of. And I did sort of worry about being the, an 8th year senior. So I tried to get out with my dignity intact.
Well, and of course, Late Night has changed over the years. Going back and looking at those original shows, right now you think about Late Night and your show, it's synonymous with like politics is in its DNA. But you think about Jay Leno and stuff, like the politics jokes were in the monologue and kind of like a ba-dum-cha, and then move on and do that kind of stuff. Was politics always something you were interested in making a bigger part of the show, or did that evolve organically?
We'd always talked about, we thought it would be interesting to interview politicians, but we were also very aware of how, at the time it was really The Daily Show and The Colbert Report were the only two shows at the time when we took over in 2014 that were doing sort of the deep dive political stuff that we do now. And it looked really hard to us. I will say that we thought, man, I don't, thank goodness we're not doing a talk show where you got to do 15 minutes on the news every night. And then we just, and then we did it once, and it was, we liked it and we felt good, and people said they liked it, and we were like, oh, maybe this is the way to do things. But it was pretty organic, and it's nice. The nice thing about it is, obviously we're really lucky to have Sal Gentile as the head writer of Closer Look. But because it takes up, it obviously takes up most of our work on any given day, but it's nice to know what's going to take up most of our work on any given day, as opposed to when our show first started. And we were having to fill the hour with a lot of little things, which took a lot of work too. So it was nice to organically evolve into a show that I think we feel very comfortable making now, and very happy with the product.
It's interesting because you think of kind of the late night genre, and it's not like anything comes fully formed. I mean, you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't tried a few segments that then became a Closer Look. It's not like you just started with a Closer Look and here's Amber Says What, and here's jokes that Steph can't tell.
Yeah.
Those kind of stepwise things that then like, oh, this feels like the show now.
Yeah. And it's, the other interesting thing is the writers have become such a huge part of our show, but again, not the way we planned. When we started the show, we hired a lot of writers in the way, and we thought they'd perform the way correspondents, or I shouldn't say correspondents, I should say guests would perform on Weekend Update. And if someone was in the news, John Lutz or Amber or Connor O'Malley would come out and play a version of that person. And it felt a little familiar. And in a way, people knew me from Weekend Update, and they knew me with Bill Hader or Forte or Andy. And it was very unfair to ask that of our writers that no one knew. And so this sort of early wave of our writers playing characters, we sort of moved away from, and we realized it was important to establish who I was before we could give voice to the writers. And then over the years, though, writers started wanting to write things where they would speak from their own experience and their own voice. And that was a far easier introduction. And so instead of Amber playing characters, Amber came out as Amber, and people could see right away that was authentic, and they were meeting this person on that person's terms. And it just locked in a lot faster. And then that, that also works with, Jenny and Allie and Karen and, and it became a part of the show that, again, you have to find, you're very lucky when you host a late night show because you get to do one every night. And you get to try a lot of different things and slowly realize what works and what doesn't.
I do miss Anniversary Guy a bit, though.
I think I really want to do a Zoom Anniversary Guy. I miss Connor a great deal. Connor, he's still doing exemplary work on the dark web, I guess. Is that where he's doing it? But that is, I'm very happy with the way the show's changed. I very much miss once a week hearing what it is that Connor wants to do on network television.
That's fair. Well, something that you did that I thought was really striking and moving is you handed your show over to Amber for an entire week after these Black Lives Matter protests and the murder of George Floyd. I was wondering if you're going to talk about how that decision comes about and trying to be fun. Like, you're making a comedy show, but like the world is on fire. So right. How do you do that? How do you come to that decision?
Well, when things have happened on the topic of race in the last 6 years, we have often turned it over to Amber. Because of her unique experience that is so different than mine. In a way, it's almost unfair the way we say to Amber, hey, you're the only one here who can handle this. But, she's risen to the occasion so many times. And, we have a couple different, franchises, for lack of a better word, that Amber does on our show, like Amber Says What or Amber's Minute of Fury. And we talked to her about those. And, Amber, and this was over the weekend when things were, getting very raw emotionally in a way that we didn't quite know how to address it. And we said to Amber, what do you think you want to do? And she was the one who suggested, I could tell a story, just a real story about my interactions with the police. And we said, great. And then she came back and said, and if you wanted, I could tell a different one every day, which we realized would give it more strength, because I think what's happened over the years is it's very easy as a white person who maybe has only had positive experiences with the police, is you can dismiss one story. But if it's someone like Amber, that if you've watched our show, the Amber you're seeing is the real Amber. She's incredibly positive person. She's upbeat, and you just couldn't believe. You could maybe believe she'd had one bad interaction, but once she told you 4, there was a weight to it that certainly never was going to come across if I was the one saying it, even if Amber had written it for me. And Amber writes a lot of great things for me. It's not like she's incapable of writing comedy in my voice, but it was just a real, not that we don't always, but really like counting your blessings for having Amber on staff, who's just so well equipped for the moment.
She's tremendous and someone I always look forward to seeing on your show. Well, and Joke Seth Can't Tell is another segment that is very funny and truthful. Like, I was curious about, like, from your perspective, the show is called Late Night with Seth Meyers, but you are very frequently saying, I shouldn't tell this joke. Let me bring out this writer who will tell this joke. Like, not even in the concept of that franchise, but just like giving these writers a platform. What's that decision process for you? Was it uncomfortable or tough to kind of cede airtime and like, these are now the stars of the show?
No, I mean, I genuinely, what I remember from Weekend Update, no matter the entire time I did it, it would start and my heart would be pounding for that first joke because it was live and you just felt like it set the tone. And usually the first joke was this incredibly well-written piece of comedy, more often than not, written by Alex Bays, our head writer now. And you just didn't want to let the process down with your own performance. And if it went well, you sort of got the first joke out, and then you maybe got a couple more out. And then you would say, now here to comment is, city correspondent Stefan. And when he came out, it was no longer work. Like, all that stress just fell away. And I just got to be next to someone who was talented, and being next to talented people, you feel their heat. And I always have loved it. And, the 2-person show I was doing that got me hired on SNL was with my comedy partner, Jill Benjamin, who was a performer like that as well. And so my entire career, I found a great benefit to being able to turn it over, but also still getting to be there and having the best seat for it. It's really, I'm really glad I came to that conclusion early in my career, because some of my best moments have been in those moments.
I think it makes the show all the better for it, and it really makes it unique and kind of stand out amongst kind of the late night stuff. And maybe take a little bit, I'm talking about when you came on the stage, suddenly there was this upheaval of Jon Stewart left The Daily Show, but The Daily Show was very much that kind of thing where Jon Stewart handing it over to correspondents, stuff like that.
And it's nice. I think when you're lucky enough to have a talented writing staff, I mean, that's one of the hardest parts about doing the show now. Like, the writers are writing as well as they ever have remotely, but you're just not stumbling into things the way, Matt Goldich was the writer who had this idea to do What Does Karen Know with Karen Chi. And that is, those are the things that come out of writers sharing a room and sort of realizing each other's strengths and writing to it. So, it's, I definitely miss it.
You brought up Stefan. One of my writers had a question for you that he wanted me to ask you, which I think is interesting because we know that Mulaney would sneak jokes in. And, we know that Bill Hader has said that he was super nervous going on, but what was Bill Hader like after wrapping those Stefan segments? Was he still a ball of nerves, or had like the breakout?
I mean, it's weird. Like, I bet I didn't see him until later that night. I mean, by the time Stefan was the runaway hit that it became, Bill was also the most used cast member. So I don't think he had, when I crushed an update, I just got to walk off and enjoy the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Whereas Bill, more often than not, had to be, dragged into the next scene and get ready to perform that way. So I think Bill could appreciate at the end of the night that the show had gone good or bad. But I do feel like in the way that he deserved to have a circle the bases after Spawn, he probably didn't get that chance. That's allergies, guys. I'm
It's the coronavirus wasps in the eye.
Yeah.
Well, and getting back to late night, you came on. Was it like a year before Trump was elected? Maybe a little bit more.
No, it was February 14, so about 18 months. Yeah.
Okay. So, what was it like for you to kind of adjust to where now there's just so much news every day from one person? how do we choose
Yeah.
what to do? Did that change the workflow at all? Although I know you guys were still kind of evolving the structure of the show at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's changed the workflow. I mean, I think what we're most interested in finding out, and what we'd like to find out in 4 months as opposed to 52 months, is how our show is going to do post-Trump. We really do hope that, even though obviously he pulls a lot of our focus, a lot of other people in the media's focus, I do hope that the way we've written, the way we've learned to write, the way we've learned how to move quickly will help us with whatever shift happens next. So, and, I'm pretty confident, I think, of the choices, Biden's going to step in it the most if he's president. I mean, it's not going to be the same thing, but, I think he's going to give us some looks.
It will be nice to not have to think about the president every single day of my life.
It'll be great.
Yeah. When that day comes. I mean, obviously the, coronavirus upended your show. How did you guys even start to begin to talk about, like, okay, how do we come back? And what is your process? Like, how are you shooting the show every day?
I mean, I don't know if I will say we've made it the most efficient version to do what we care about the most, which is to write. There's probably a higher tech version of the show that we could do that would just take a little bit more time on the part of the show that I'm worse at and would also have to be in charge of. But basically, I come up here, I have a first draft of a closer look from Sal. Alex Bays and I each take a pass on it. I marry the drafts and send it back out. And then we do like a 7-person Zoom call at around 10:45 a.m. And then while Sal puts it all together, I record things like intros. I record the monologue. I have a couple of Zoom interviews a day, usually around 2:45. I record on an iPad. I've got 4 lights. Let me show you my little lights like those guys. Those are my Loom cubes. Shout out to Loom. You guys feel free to send me free stuff if that's what you do as a company. But it's been fun. I mean, look, it's weird not having an audience, but I think it's better not having an audience here than it is in an empty studio. I don't think anybody watches and thinks, I liked his attic shows when there was an audience in the attic. So it's a good way for people to remember. It's weird to make a show that you'll be able to go back and look and know exactly when it happened, because we're obviously not in the studio.
Well, and it's been interesting watching your joke delivery as well. At the beginning, everyone, I mean, you, Colbert, Kimmel, like, we're trying to, like, how long do I pause? Do I need to pause?
Yes.
But now it's very kind of Sorkin-esque, where it's just like wrapping off. Is
Yes.
it going to be tough to go back to, like, oh, wait, now I have to pause for applause?
I mean, I will say that Alex Bays, the only note, and again, Bays and I have now, and we're probably coming on 15 years of working together, and he's written more of the words I've said than anyone. The note he gives me the most often is slow down. Like, I would very much like to be talking like an Aaron Sorkin character pretty much full time. So it has been nice as he has slowly allowed me to get a little bit faster on the delivery of the monologue and sort of hop from joke to joke, because I do think audiences at home are probably less prone to laughing out loud the way it's sort of a collective laughter when you're in it's contagious when you're in a studio. There's nothing, not a great word to be using right now, obviously, but that's why we don't have audiences. Audiences are contagious. But, I feel like the human brain can hear a joke, process whether or not they like it, and move on pretty quickly to the next joke without you leaving a big old pause. So it has been a learning curve. And I will say, like, look, there's plenty of terrible things that happen on Twitter, but I do find it a pretty good place for feedback. And there were some really helpful people who reached out with text suggestions for us, and other people give you those suggestions on delivery. And especially when you can tell it's someone who's been watching the show and who likes the show, it's always nice to hear and say, okay, yeah, that's good to know. All right, thank you.
What led to the decision to hire Ethan Hawke as your lighting guy? Hiding behind
I did not realize Ethan Hawke was here. I've heard tale that he was behind me, which is bad, because the last thing we want to do is spray for Ethan Hawke. But, I thought wasps were bad. But yeah, it's obviously a problem.
That's fair. I don't have a ton of time left with you, but I have to ask you about Documentary Now, which
Thank
is
you.
just an incredible show. It's a gift that you're giving to maybe a small fraction of people, but those people adore it. What's the status of the next season? I know you guys have been renewed.
We have been renewed, and we're all, I think, unfortunately, because of our SNL background, we're all a little bit like procrastinators, and obviously COVID has slowed down production, and so whenever it was we were going to start season 4 has been pushed a little bit to undetermined date. But the great thing about the show is it's not like it's a long break between Sopranos seasons and people are going to forget what we were talking about. We're making each season, we're telling 6 short stories basically. And so I really can't thank IFC enough. They're the ones who give us this, incredible opportunity to tell stories that, as you mentioned, no one was begging for. But it's really cool to, we always laugh about no one is going back and saying, you know what I'd like to watch tonight? A January 2017 late night with Seth Meyers. Nobody does that. But I do think there's, at any point, in the next 20 years, someone might stumble upon a Documentary Now episode, and it will be exactly as good then as now, because it wasn't like 2015 was an important time to do a Grey Gardens parody. And so it's nice to make something that feels like it will have staying power.
Have you been getting texts from friends of people lobbying to play Joe Exotic? Is there a tiger?
Yeah, I'm always a little worried about those like documentaries that too many people talk about.
Yeah.
Because look,
I can tell from watching.
I can't stress enough. We're not trying to be a hit here. I'm sure we'll pick. I'm sure we'll pick 6 documentaries, 2 of which some people have heard of, and 4 of which nobody's heard of.
I cannot wait. And I know you and Shoemaker are also working on a show for Amber on Peacock, which I'm super excited about. Just my last question for you, I was curious kind of how do you plan on making that show distinctive to her voice?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen what's distinctive to her voice. She's going to do it with Jenny Hagel, who is the other half of Jokes Seth Cantel. And, they've worked together forever. The reason Jenny's on our show is Amber told us we'd be crazy not to hire her. And I just have a lot of faith that the 2 of them and whatever staff they put together are not going to need much help from us finding a way to be distinctive. The reality of their success on our show has always been that they're self-starters. They rarely, if you call Amber and say, hey, what if you guys did something on Juneteenth? She'll just say, oh, it's done already. You haven't checked your inbox. And you're like, oh, right. So those are the kind of people that are, you don't have to worry about when they have their own show, because they've been doing it already.
Are they still going to be involved with late night once that takes off, or are they?
That's our hope. And with that said, if they ever came to us and said it was too much, obviously we would understand. But we would like them to continue to be a vital part of late night, because they are, again, everybody on our staff is they're all essential workers. But those 2 really, really bring something that I've never been around before. So I wouldn't know how to replace it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, you and your writer's staff really, it's genuinely the best late night show on right now. It's consistently funny, surprising, and just really sharp and incisive. I can't say it enough. So I'm super grateful that you agreed to come on here and talk a little bit.
Thanks. I hope I feel a little glistening, but I don't think it got too bad, right?
I think it's okay. There's Ethan Hawke's right behind you.
Oh, shit. All right. Bye, buddy.